I was fortunate enough to go to the Kent Institute of Art and Design, and prior to that, the Eastbourne College of Arts and Technology, ECAT, from 1990 to 92, and then from 92 to 96, I was at the Kent Institute of Art and Design. Eastbourne, I did a BTEC National Diploma in General Art and Design, so you try everything for the first year: photography, printmaking, things like life drawing every week, every day, colour, learning the colour wheel, and also we did ceramics and pottery. You try a bit of everything, and then you specialise in what you think you're going to be interested in the most for your second year. And I moved towards communication media and illustration, even though it was quite loosely based. It was more fine arty at Eastbourne. I was always working in a more fine art way anyway. Did well at Eastbourne, and then I went to the Kent Institute of Art and Design, KIAD, from 92 to 95, did my degree. And then the college asked me to stay on a year with Carl Griffiths, another artist who was also there with me that whole time, and we were flatmates. So 6 years at art school, then I left and was either going to go to New York, where I'd been speaking to the School of the Visual Arts about doing an MA, but I didn't have any money and any support. I just supported myself throughout the whole thing. So I moved to Brighton, and then got my first flat and my first studio. It definitely has an impact on how I create art. I guess because I didn't have any money. So the early art I started making was from collecting books and vintage objects and found objects. One of the first artists I discovered at Eastbourne Art College in the library was an artist called Joseph Cornell from New York, who used to make box art and 3D assembled art. And Peter Blake was very influenced by Joseph Cornell. So my very first art I made personally was collage-based, where I would find, say, a Bible, vintage, crucifix, or some objects like things I'd cut out of National Geographics, or a cat skull, and it was all assembled within a collage set. It was like a mixed media collage, my early work. And then I started to look at what I was putting together, and you'd have aspects of life and death and nature, and I can see that informed my later work, which is still like that. It's still collagey now, although it's hand painted. In the early works, you could see, because of lack of money and finding Joseph Cornell's work and then Peter Blake's work, my first pieces were with what I had: old books, old objects and things. First artists I were really inspired by were, other than Joseph Cornell, were Peter Blake, and his use of 3D vintage objects and wood and found objects and collage. And then I was really into Jackson Pollock, and I like Matisse, especially his paper cuts and use of colour. I did a lot of Pollock style paintings when I was still a student, just for fun, with gloss paint. Then really when I got into Warhol and discovered him and the power of his work and printmaking, that had a big influence. Later, when I saw Basquiat's work in 1994 or something, it kind of affected me, because I'd been working very similar to Jean-Michel Basquiat in my own work. Very spontaneous use of colour and mark making and words in my work. Every day when I was at Maidstone, I didn't have much money, so canvas wasn't an option. I would buy 10 sheets of paper every day, and I would do 10 works on paper every day. So it was really raw and spontaneous and just finding my way. And then really discovered Hockney later and fell in love with his work and his use of colour mainly. And so I'd say Hockney and Warhol are two of my biggest influences. I've got an exhibition in Switzerland this year with a gallery I've worked with for a few years called Petra Gut, which is quite interesting because Petra seems to mainly represent photographers, which I find fascinating because my work is very different to the other artists she works with. But we've been in a few group shows with her, and the new collection I've put together for her looks fantastic. So I'm working on that now, but I've also put together a collection for a gallery in Harrogate. I've worked with them for a few years. And there's a third show planned for the end of year in Brighton. It's 20 years since I started working with Lawrence Alkin, who owned Art Republic, Lawrence Alkin Gallery, Inked Gallery, Enter Gallery. And I also work with Lawrence on a charity called Connecting the Roots in Costa Rica. So we're celebrating our 20th year working together with a print launch, hopefully a book release. We're hoping to produce this new book that this designer has done for me. We're just speaking to a publisher about that. So that'll be fun. And other than that, I've just been approached by the Teenage Cancer Trust to release an exclusive print with them. So that's in progress. And I work with an image agency called Bridgman Images, and they want to do a print with me as well. So that's quite positive. There are many challenges to being an artist. I think mentally, you sort of feel, well, where am I in the art world? Where is my place? You don't know. You're sort of on your own, in your own bubble, in your own head, creating. And you want to be in that bubble, focusing on the creative side of it. That's where I think artists are most comfortable. And then there's the outside side of being an artist and survival and financial survival. And the art, what's happening in the last few years with the world is affecting how artists are earning their money. Peter Blake said to me many years ago how printmaking was a massive part of survival for him. It's his bread and butter. I would say printmaking is a big side of my annual output. But there's other ways of survival as an artist, licensing agreements and realizing the value of your work. So one thing I've always done since 2005 is professionally photograph every painting. So I pay a photographer to come to my studio, and he's got a camera that is worth £20,000. Those digital files are priceless. An example of that is how a painting I made 4 years ago was recently turned into a book cover. Just a detail of that painting. So it lives again with a new life. The painting went to America. That was sort of the end of that part of it. But then it lived again when a publisher in New York saw that image and thought, that's perfect for this book cover, or just part of it is. So that's always fascinated me, how a painting can have multiple lives. And one painting I did many years ago called Cyclone was exhibited in a show. Then the painting was turned into a print edition. Then it got seen by a famous musician who then wanted to use it as his album cover. The record label wanted his face on the cover, but it became the gatefold inside sleeve thing, and then they bought the rights to another painting, and then it got broken down into the single releases, and then they wanted to do a t-shirt, and then it was his backdrop in America and in Europe and at Glastonbury. And that one painting had this multiple life. Other paintings I've produced have sold from an exhibition, but then gone on to become used in fabric or a fashion collection or a dress or a scarf or so it fascinates me. There's many sides to surviving as an artist, and there's many sides to being an artist. It's a fascinating journey, which I'm 33 years into now, age 51. And I'm still sort of warming up. I think, I've got to just stick at this now, stop changing. I'm always moving forwards and adapting. And sometimes the hardest thing is just to continue doing something over and over that people love and not keep moving forward. There's this natural instinct to move forward all the time. Because I'm curious always about exploring new places, like different colour combinations. Colour really is my main passion. Anyway, I'm rambling on. There's this documentary about the band Coldplay, and at the end, Chris Martin says if you could write a letter to your 17-year-old self and tell him what you've been up to, you'd blow his mind. And that really resonated with me, because we're so focused on the moment and moving forward that we have to sometimes stop and just say, look how far you've come. And this is my 25th solo exhibition I'm putting together now. Peter Blake, who was this influence in my early work, then I've had lunch with him many times, and he wrote the intro to my book. It's the same with musicians and famous people that have bought my art. And the law of attraction is actually the way the universe works. We become what we think, and it's this journey. We must stop and pat ourselves on the back sometimes, and just I've done it all on my own. I've not had any support. I've just had this. I think what it is, it comes back to the fact that after I left school, I didn't have a clue. I did not know my future. I was always creative as a child. I thought maybe I'd be a carpenter. My parents split up when I was 9, and I was just sort of really happy-go-lucky. I was really into drumming and skateboarding, and I built myself a half pipe because there was nothing in those days. And then I didn't have a clue what I was going to do after school. And I really put it down to this one person, Mr. Everett, my art teacher at school, Mr. John Everett. He looked out for me. He saw something in me that he reached out to help. And I went and had a cup of tea with him. And he said, I think you'd be perfect for art school. And at that moment, a light bulb just went off above my head. Of course, fucking yes, thank you. Art college. No one had suggested that. No one had seen that. No one had thought about that being an option. I think my mother would have been happy if I was working with a building company, or I would have made a good carpenter, I think. And I still work with wood now, and I love that. And I think carpentry is a great trade. But it wasn't, for me, meant to be that way. And he made a call to Eastbourne Art College, and I got an interview. I had no idea what I was meant to do with that interview. I just spent 6 weeks making art. I didn't know what to paint or what to do. So I did some abstract pieces. I painted some Converse. I did some still life. I did a whole load of different things. And it was enough, luckily, to get me in. And then my journey began when I got into art college, and I discovered all these other artists. And I was like a sponge, I had to just try everything. So I've tried everything pretty much. I got the opportunity to create some bronze sculptures a few years ago with a foundry in Athens who said, let us just show you what we can do. And their specialist area is the lost wax technique of casting. and you can cast the most fragile elements, from a bird's nest to a feather to, I did a lot of sculpture, so I got really absorbed in that for a long time. I got really absorbed in ceramics for many years. And I've been absorbed a lot in printmaking in the last 20 years. Unconventional mediums or techniques. I've tried animation. I spent a month doing an animation in in iPhoto, using a sort of cut and paste technique of animation. I've tried a lot over in 30 years, pretty much everything. I love seeing my art on textiles. Number 7, do you listen to music or have any other types of background noise while you work? I'll either be intensively listening to music, or I'll be listening to a meditation, sort of chant, om chant, or I'll be listening to YouTube, learning. So it really depends on the situation, but in the last week I've been on my own, and I've just been listening to music intensively whilst working. Number 8, what's the best reaction someone has had to your artwork? Oh, wow. It's when famous people that you look up to yourself have collected your artwork that it's a major compliment. I remember meeting Chris Packham, and he said he had about 8 of my prints, and I just love that because I look up to him and he's someone I respect. Same with Liam Howlett from The Prodigy. He said to me he had 20 Dan Baldwins. I'm a massive Prodigy fan. Things like that. Best reaction. Being inspirational, I suppose, when students and pupils at schools have done their art based on your work. And best reaction, that's a tricky one. I might need to think about that one a bit more. What do you hope people take away from your artwork? I love it when people just love looking at my work and they're inspired by my colours and my compositions, and they say, I can always keep looking at your piece and find something new. And you get very loyal fans who love what you do, and they're the ones that keep you going, really. On the days like today in the studio when I'm on my own and it's gloomy outside, it's perfect for painting. It's hard to paint when it's sunny, I find. You have to really get absorbed into it. And it's those people that love my work that push me, and I'm visualising the next show, and I'm visualising the events and the works hung and framed. And, then there's that journey. If you sell one, the client loves your work, and then a year later they might want another one, and they start to collect, and they'll start with one, and then quickly they'll end up with a dozen on their wall. That's what you hope. No, I'm joking. It's just this journey, and you never know what's going to pop up.